All right, I'm back. I have some more stuff to talk about. Today, I want to talk about the I guess it's called the theory of everything, and this would be a theory that would explain the universe, the origin of the universe. Uh, it would probably unite the other theories. I think the theory of relativity and quantum mechanics might be bridged, unified, a unified theory, a theory of everything. It's always a project that scientists work on, physicists, uh, and it's kind of a tall order. And I see science today as isolated from the other tribes among us, philosophers, poets. By the way, now poets to me, they're closer to the truth than anyone, but I'll leave that aside. But and then they're artists and I think philosophers. I may have already mentioned that, but there's lots of us here, lots of schools of thought. But science, I think, is isolated, and there's one tribe that is, I guess, mortal enemies with science, and that's religion. And I feel that in the quest for a unified theory, in the quest to explain the universe, sooner or later, the entity of God has to be introduced into this theory. And I think it's simply a missing part. And I believe today that the belief in God, I think, is regarded mostly as it's a sign that the person who believes this is not fully educated. It's uh, I think the academia, scientific community, that kind of, they regard that as not cool, not cool. It's they see it maybe as a primitive superstition, that kind of thing. But and I think the reason is because God is absolutely tied to organized religion. It's almost synonymous. The words are almost synonymous, and it is so difficult to explain to a person that you believe in God, but you really don't uh, believe in religion. And I believe the two topics are separate and should be, and especially if God is going to be part of a theory that describes the universe and creation of it, we have to wrestle with it. But the the first theory that comes to mind, of course, is the Big Bang, and the Big Bang theory describes the creation of the universe, and what it describes is a thing. Uh, I guess it's a particle. In my mind, that's what it is. And in my mind, it's about the size of an egg, this thing. And it's called a singularity. And I want to read this one. The singularity is a speck of unlimited heat and density, and it expanded and formed the universe over a period of 13.7 billion years. And there's other writings about this thing, singularity. It's called a singularity, and there is some writings that explain that this singularity existed before space and time existed, and then it began its expansion, and space and time came after that. And another description of a singularity is a point at which a function takes on infinite value, especially in space and time, when matter is infinitely dense. And I think of this a point, a singularity, infinite density, infinite heat, gravity, infinite space and time in this. And there is for me a similarity between this spec and the descriptions of God, in the sense that the use of the word infinity, the direct description of creating the universe. The Webster definition of God is the creator and ruler of the universe and source for all moral authority, the supreme being. And this little guy has a lot of things in common with what we regard as God. And the little thing, the singularity, for me, my take on it is it's not an entity. As near as I can understand, it's a particle. It's a thing. A speck, a singularity, and where I differ, and where what I think, maybe instead of entertaining the possibility that this is the beginning of the universe, if we could just for a moment separate God, and I use the word God because I'm a Westerner, and that's the word for a concept, for a creature, an entity. But I try to, I think science should remove this concept of God from religion and entertain the possibility that there is an entity. And this spec, this singularity, it does have quite a bit in common with the old boy, in terms of infinity. And there is one reference that it was here before there was space and time, and it actually mentions the word omnipresence, and that's another thing this spec has in common with God. And the concept of God, of course, is ancient. It's way before Christianity, and it's global. And lots of ancient cultures have had this. Egypt went through a period where they had a concept of a god. The Native Americans' concept of a great spirit or great mystery is another way to say it. They saw it as a celestial deity, a god of creation, history, and eternity. And a Manitou, that's another version, spiritual and fundamental life force believed to be omnipresent. So these descriptions of God, to me, they do relate to the thing described in the Big Bang. Now, like I say, scientists, I think generally it's typical, to run into a scientist that does not believe in the existence of a God, and I feel it's mainly because God is hooked to religion, and science and religion have never got along. At times they really are mortal enemies, and nowadays, like I say, in college, in the intelligentsia, academia, in I guess the world of physics, scientific tribes, it's just not cool. It's just not hip. It's just, like I say, it's an antiquated superstition, I think, is how they would regard it. It has no scientific value. But I would like to make a pitch for the old boy. I find it, well, I'll say it this way. The universe, we could start with the world and observing any living organism on this earth. They are truly remarkable things. They possess systems, intricate systems inside of systems, inside their bodies. And they are physically beautiful. The colors, the line, the proportion, the design of living things has a beauty, an artistic merit, and this is, well documented by artists themselves. These systems within systems, and this physical beauty, we attempt to replicate this in everything we ever do. We want these intricate systems that function, and we want the thing to be pleasing to the eye, beautiful. And my example, I guess, would be the automobile. You can plainly see, if you will, it's like our body. You could see the gas tank as its stomach, and the radiator. These are like stomachs. The electrical system would be like our nervous system. The windshield would be like our eyes, and the wipers are like our eyelids. The device like a carburetor or a fuel injector, but where the gasoline mixes with the air, certainly that could be compared to our lungs and so forth. We always study these systems inside of systems and try to replicate them in our creations. And these systems I described are also in nature, ecosystems and systems inside of the ecosystems. It's a thing of the organic creatures on our earth are a thing of beauty and a thing of marvel, of study, and we try to replicate these things in our artwork, in our inventions. And then there's another thing that organic life has in common. They all do. Their bodies are able to repair themselves and make new cells, and sometimes when they're injured, actually repair the injury, but they're constantly maintaining themselves and perform repairs on their body as they go through life. And they also have the ability to reproduce themselves. And this is something, of course, we would love to replicate in our creations, but so far we've never been able to do anything quite like that. I also want to say that in this universe, that I believe was created by this entity called God, this universe, when we look through our telescopes, we can see great distances into the cosmos, and then we have the Hubble telescope, and then we have the Voyager, and we, as of now, have never found the end of the universe. Never. There is no end to it. And with the microscope, there are microscopic beings, and every time we find the very smallest, it's not long before we find one even smaller than that, and then one on the back of that one, and so forth. We have yet to find the end of the world that's in our microscopes. So it's almost like if we put a telescope and butted a microscope up to it, that is almost a portrait of infinity itself. Now, all this stuff I've described, all of it, every creature on earth, every tree, every plant, every living thing on earth, the cosmos, and then the microscopic world, all of it, all of these things. There is a school of thought that regards their creation as happenstance, that this is just happenstance. There is no entity that created this. It just randomly happened. And yet, this same community, scientists, would go into a cave and look at a cave painting of bison, and they would conclude that cave painting is the work of an intelligent being. And I think that the universe is at least as complex and beautiful and awesome as a cave painting. But there are scientists who insist the cave painting is done by intelligent life and the universe is happenstance. And I cannot I'm lost right now. I have to take a break.